So tonight on the program, let's join a diplomat who understands the terrain to help us preview the coming days as it affects global and regional politics. Ambassador Martin Adamu is a one-time alternate political coordinator, Nigeria's delegation to the UNSC New York, is a current chargé d'affaires Nigerian embassy in Kiev, Ukraine. Good evening and thank you for joining us on the program. Well, history has been made in a lot of ways today in the United States, but let me get your opinion. What was the highlight for you in today's inauguration?
Well, I was very encouraged by the decision of the new president, to extend his hand to all Americans, and in a kind of rapprochement. Following the 4 years, in the U.S. And well, I was happy that he has said he will lead with his heart, and that he's going to, the Constitution is going to be prime. So with that, he encouraged people on both sides of the divide to join hands together to restore America to its former glory, should I say.
Still speaking of that speech, he spoke about uniting the nation. But, isn't it rather ironic that the United States has a lot of uniting to do? So how did United States of America become the States of America, which is in need of uniting?
Well, that's attributable to, the last 4 years. It was a divisive presidency. And of course, everybody noted that. This time around, we're hoping that, we don't hope, but we believe that, the efforts to try and reunite the country will be successful.
Mm. Well, another highlight, if you may, or low light for some people, is the fact that President Donald Trump was absent. Only few presidents have done this, really. So do you think that this might put some spanners in the works for President Biden in the bid to reunite the nation? You have a former president who did not attend the inauguration. And of course, he has millions of supporters. So how do you see this affecting the work ahead for President Biden?
Well, actually, President Biden has his work cut out for him, really. However, it's not unsurmountable. I think, yes, the former president actually fed off his divisive tactics. And whatever we can say is the summary of the last 4 years, it was actually inbred in. There were dormant tendencies of a section of the American population. So with this passionate appeal he has made, and perhaps we will see in the coming days and weeks, what policies he will put in place. But it really is up to the Americans to decide on their own, because you can't force somebody to you can't force thought. So I believe. At least a portion of them we started seeing after the events of 6th January. We started seeing some kind of change of attitude in a certain percentage. So if that continues and that new spirit of unity continues, we may see more people departing from the hardline approach.
There's been a lot of talks about the coming days. I mean, you have referenced that. So if we could just preview in some sense, you've seen the build-up to the elections. You've seen Vice President Biden for 8 years. So what kind of president do you expect him to be?
I expect him to be a people's president. I expect him to, he has already shown that in the selection of his cabinet, and in other things, in all his pronouncements so far, he's shown that he's ready to reach across various boundaries and divides, not only in terms of race, but in terms of color, creed, and all other kinds of divisions that do exist.
Well, he'll also, of course, he is the oldest American president. And that again brings up the talk about age and governance. I mean, in Africa, for example. Now we're seeing in the United States, 78-year-old president. So for you, does age really matter in these things?
You know, age, that's a difficult question. With age comes wisdom, but then also you need energy, in the position of a president. You need to be able to, you need the energy because it's long hours, it's travels, it's, meetings, etc., etc. So age can matter. Let me put it that way. Age can matter, but doesn't necessarily have to be a hindrance.
Right. I mean, that's an interesting way to put it because there have been comparisons with what's happening in America with a lot of things happening in the United States. But away from that age talk is the policies that will be put in place. You have also referenced that during the course of our conversation. So if you could set priorities really for the president in terms of policies, because we have the fight against COVID-19, there's also the immigration policies, there's diplomacy. Like you said, his work is cut out for him pretty much. So in terms of priorities, what should be the policies that should be first and then the ones that can come much later for the president?
Okay, well, I think, of course, everybody knows that, the COVID pandemic has really devastated us in the last year. So I would imagine that would be the number one priority would be, the campaign against COVID and how to probably increase the rate of vaccinations. Then, of course, other policies that would be put in place, mostly economic for now, political policies as well would be very important. But I believe, because it's not just an American problem, really, but for America, revamping the economy, because it's really been a tough one for them and for everybody else in the world.
One thing that former President Trump, I mean, we have to get used to that, kept saying time and again, is the fact that America comes first. With this new president, does that really change the America First policy, or at least direction to policies?
Well, he did also say in his inaugural speech that he was going to reach out to America's friends and also to other members of the international community. But I think in every country, every policy has to be targeted towards domestic improvement and domestic, for domestic advantage. So America First remains America First. Just like, well, I know we're not talking about Nigeria, but Nigeria First. That is what our policies are supposed to be. To be targeted towards internal improvement.
Well, trust me, we're zoning in on Nigeria very soon. But, I mean, talking about the diplomatic relations of the United States, yes, Nigeria will also come in. But, I mean, we've seen what played out during the Trump administration. I mean, you have followed this definitely as a diplomat. You have seen the relationship with various other world powers and regions. So if you could just give us a context, just how, maybe badly, how much was this affected during the Trump presidency, from where you sit, that is?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the last part of the question.
So I'm asking about diplomatic relations with other world powers and regions. How badly or how much was it affected during the Trump presidency, as a context to my next question? But please help us understand how much it was affected during the previous administration.
Yeah, I think it had quite an impact because we saw, America pull out of some international agreements. We also saw there was use of undiplomatic language when addressing other heads of state. And, there were scandals here and there. some accusing American and the former American leadership and the Russian leadership as well. So there were so many incidents which were hitherto one would not have associated with an American leadership.
Mm. Interestingly, you are close to Russia, being in Ukraine, so you, of course, definitely have a better view than most of us. So I asked how it was affected. So as it stands right now, what is the view of America, maybe from your part of the world, even from Africa, because, of course, you're a Nigerian. So how is America viewed right now? Some say America has been demystified, I mean, in the build-up to this, but what's the general view?
I think, well, the general view was that they personalized it. You know, it was personified. It was not America as a country, but Donald Trump as a person. For some time, I think America will remain, you know, will maintain its leadership position in the world. And yes, the sentiments across, you know, the world were not so favorable towards the former leadership. But as I said, I don't think it was targeted at America as a country.
So let's talk about Nigeria, or maybe the African region, because there's been a lot of anticipation. You may have seen some people brandishing clothing that were, you know, that had marks or, I mean, images of the president and his vice, saying, you know, the usual Ashwebi and all that from here in Nigeria. But the point is what this holds for Nigeria as a nation. Is there anything really to look forward to with this new administration?
Yes. You know, we hope that this administration would be more friendly towards Africa, towards Nigeria, would be more friendly. If you remember, there was a travel ban instituted against certain countries, and Nigeria was one of those countries ab initio. It was later taken off. But these are the kind of things that, as I said, you know, were attributable to the person of the leader of the United States and not to the national policy as it were. We're hoping that, you know, trade and, you know, especially perhaps defense partnership and cooperation would also be improved. And, you know, well, hopefully, you know, at the other side of the pandemic, travel restrictions, etc., we're hoping that we can maintain the very, very cordial relationships we have with the United States of America. Okay,
so let's talk about Vice President Harris, because I mean that's one of the biggest highlights of this whole process. So how much of a game changer really is our emergence for America, women, and governance generally?
Personally, you know, America is a country of institutions. Yes, we have now African American and Asian American vice presidents. The position of vice president has not really been so prominent in the United States. And I think at the end of the day, it's just going to be a continuation of the normal policies which are going to define this leadership. Yes, you know, the color of her skin is different and her ethnicity is also different. But at the end of the day, it's just, that should not detract from the quality of her intellect and her abilities. So I think we should focus more on what she can bring to the table as an individual, rather than what she can bring to the table as an African American or an Asian American. I think it goes beyond that.
Well, as we wind down, really, do you see a comeback for former President Trump?
Not if the Congress has its way. Well, not if the leadership has its way down. Because if he gets, if this impeachment should go through, then you know, it pretty much stops him in his tracks. But even now, I mean, let's not forget that he does have a considerable following. But whether that following was as a result of his being in the limelight, or whether it was by virtue of him being who he is, remains to be seen. So let's watch in the next 6 months if we still have pro-Trump people, followers and supporters, and they're making a big fuss. Then we know that he actually did have that clout. But I think personally, the Trump era is over.
Well, so many lessons to learn from this, really. And I mean, the coming days would also give us a lot of lessons to learn. But I'd like to thank you so much, Ambassador Martin Adamu, for sharing your thoughts with us on the program. We appreciate you. And we look forward to having this conversation with you again in the future, definitely.